a very quick introduction so people in the call know who you are very briefly. And then I give you the floor, and maybe Simon and yourself, you can introduce yourself. So as Vanita said, we run 4 projects this year, and Noise Solution was another project that we run in August. From memory, we had 50 or so amazing submissions, including, as Vanessa said, a data sonification, which is like someone using music so as a data viz. So Noise Solution is based in the UK. They're a social enterprise that deliver music monitoring to the youth at risk. So we've invited them because I think they're an amazing organization, very inspiring, and also very cutting edge. So someone who's going to be talking is no, Damien is going to be talking. So Damien is the operation director, and Simon in the background is the CEO of Noise Solution. So Damien has been instrumental implementing Salesforce within Noise Solution. And I don't know if you're going to touch on Salesforce, Damien, but looks like what you're doing is really interesting and cutting edge. You've won a lot of awards, been talking at a lot of conferences, and then you are, I believe, implementing some Gen AI technologies for social impact and try to get some insights. So the talk today is feedback from the dead, which I think is quite intriguing. So over to you now. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So you've covered most of it, so that's all fine. So let me just set the presentation. It's always much easier when you do it in person, right? You can see that.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Awesome. So as Frederick said, my name's Damien, Operations Director for an organization called Noise Solution. We are a social enterprise based in the east of England, delivering music mentoring to youth at risk. The reason we're here talking today is because as a social purpose organization, we've done lots and lots of work on understanding our social impact. So understanding what impact we're having, understanding how we're having those impacts, why we're having those impacts, and understanding how to measure those to demonstrate our impact to others and also to demonstrate our impact to ourselves. So we've won lots of shiny awards, as you can see, from people like Royal Society of Public Health, PwC, Digital Culture Awards. We won for the work that I'm going to show you. We won a Digital Revolution Award for excellence in AI, in which we beat Microsoft in our category, which we're very, very pleased about. I'm not sure Microsoft are quite as pleased, but that kind of shows the level of work that we're doing. So essentially, in terms of Noise Solution, what we do is really, really simple. We pair young people facing all sorts of different challenges with non-formal professional musicians. So young people that are outside of school, young people that are engaged with mental health services, youth justice services, young people that generally those services can't engage with. We pair them with a non-formal musician. So nothing to do with scales and notation and oboes and violins. It's predominantly digitally driven. We do guitars and keyboards and drums and all that sort of stuff as well. And we hook up with them and we make beepy noises. It's as simple as that. The first question we ask is, what do you want to make? And then we go off and we make that music, whether it's grime or R&B or drum and bass or acoustic singer-songwriting or Dolly Parton covers, doesn't matter. We make whatever the young person's interested in. Crucially, we use industry standard tools and processes to do that so that the music that the young person makes sounds the same as the music that they listen to. So it's kind of authentic. Running across the center of everything that we do is this kind of experience, this digital community, where we capture moments of the young person being good at something. We use lots of audio, lots of video, lots of photos, and we share those successes with people that the young person has identified as important to them. So we set this digital story up. And then the young person invites mum, invites teacher, invites best friend into this community that looks and feels like other social media experiences, but it's secure, it's private, it's specifically for them. And those people are encouraged to like and comment on what they've seen in a kind of social media-esque experience. So it's that kind of capturing and sharing of success that really helps us to be impactful. So what we do is really straightforward. Young person, musician, beepy noises, sharing, it's all very straightforward. But actually, how we do it is the important thing. So as far as the young person's concerned, we come alongside them, make beepy noises, and they go away having learned how to do that. But actually, what we're trying to do is deliberately facilitate conditions that have been proven to foster positive well-being and foster intrinsic motivation, right? So what we do isn't important, but how we do it is really important. And the first thing we need to do is embed this kind of sense of competence, this sense of feeling good at something. And these are young people who are very often surrounded by conversations where the subtext is you're not doing very well at this, you're not doing very well at that, you're not good enough to do this. So we need to make them feel good at something again. We use music, it doesn't really matter, but they need to experience that sense of competence, that sense of feeling good at something. The second thing is we need to put that young person in control of what we're doing. So again, when young people enter services, our default reaction is to take that control away from them. So to position the professional in the position of control, and the young person has to be controlled in order to overcome whatever issue or issues they're presenting with. So we need to put that young person back in control of what's happening. So the young person is in control of when we meet them, where we meet them, the music we create, how it's created, and who they share it with, right? They're truly in control of the whole process. And the last kind of aspect is this sense of relatedness, this sense of being connected to, seen by, valued by other people. And very often, the young people that we work with are in very complex situations. They've got lots of complex and difficult relationships around them. And those relationships often have broken down, especially with the professionals around them. So we need to ensure that they're seen by and valued by other people. If we do that, if we line all three of those things up, we get intrinsic motivation, we get better well-being. It's not us making this up. It's a theory called self-determination theory, which is a very, very widely evidenced motivational theory, which underpins all of the work that we do, and it underpins the work that we're doing with AI. So as a social purpose organization, we see impact in this kind of impact 360 picture. This is what we're trying to create in terms of our impact capture, because impact isn't unidimensional, right? There isn't just one thing that we could look at in order to understand impact. And it's not transactional. It's not the case that we do this thing and then that thing happens, right? People are complex, and the impact that we have on people and their lives is also complex. So we see impact in three main ways. We see impact from a number perspective. There's things that we can do to count the impact that we have on people, and we'll talk about that in a second. There's stories, there's things that people tell you through our digital story and through other means. And then there's the kind of financial savings proxies that we have on people. So if we take the number data to begin with, numbers are easy to count and analyze, right? And as data visualization specialists, you'll know this. We use something called the shortened Warwick-Edinburgh Mental Wellbeing Scale, or SWEMWEBS for short, which is an academically validated tool to assess how someone's feeling about their own well-being. So 7-item scale, Likert responses. We capture these data when somebody starts with us and when somebody finishes with us. We don't capture it every time we see them. Start, end, measure the distance traveled, and we then analyze those data at various population levels. It's not a diagnostic tool. It's a self-reflective tool, but it gives us enough of a steer to see whether or not our work is impactful. Shout out to Viz for Social Good, because this is one of the bits of the visualization that I've nicked. And if you're on the call, thank you, it's great. But what we can see here is between start and end, we get significant reductions in low well-being. We get increases in moderate well-being and increases in high well-being. So we can see from these number data that our work is impactful on people's well-being and people's motivation. For the data scientists amongst you, we run statistical analyses on these data. These data are statistically significant, and we've run range of change data with a moderate to high level range of change as well. So from a number perspective, Noise Solutions work is impactful. We also know that our work returns savings back to the economy, back to UK PLC. We had a piece of work revisited this year, last year, with a team of health data specialists in Cambridge doing a 6 or 8 month piece of work to evidence our return on investment. And I can send a link to the extended report. We basically asked them to give us a very conservative estimate. Don't claim things that we're making up, right? Evidence what you're doing and tell us how much money we're returning back into the system. And that report has come back with a £12.56 return for every pound invested, which is a really interesting figure because it means we saved UK PLC over 6 million quid in the last financial year alone. But then overlaid on top of that, we've got all of this unsolicited story data. And what you're seeing on the screen now is unsolicited feedback that we've had returned to us from young people, from their families, from their professionals, telling us their experience, right? So I can name in my head a whole list of young people that will tell you they wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for Noise Solution. There are young people that were elective mute that have now started speaking again because of their work with Noise Solution. There's a young woman that we spoke with who was in inpatient psychiatric care. Her parents were told she would not come out of inpatient psychiatric care, and she's now finishing her master's at the University of Derby or somewhere, directly attributed by her to the work that Noise Solution does. So we get lots and lots of these unsolicited story data coming into our inboxes, which is great. At the end of every session, though, musician and young person record a short reflection video, really conversational. I'll show you one in a minute. Really conversational, reflecting on what they did in the session. How was it for you? How did you feel? What did you do? What did you like? What didn't you like? All that kind of conversational, reflective stuff. At the moment, we're delivering 500 or 600 hours a month of one-to-one music mentoring, and these videos are being recorded every time, right? So we're building this massive data bank of qualitative impact data that we need to be able to process.
I've gone from having the worst 2 weeks I've ever had in my life with my mental health. Managed to somehow keep my head above water and not do anything stupid or crazy. But I feel like it was worth it because at the end of all of that pain and tears and anger and all them emotions comes this little bit of music that I made. And that makes me happy in itself because I've progressively done something that is making me happy.
Considering everything that you've been through the last 2 weeks and for this to come out of it, that is nothing short of amazing. So I am very proud.
I'm immensely proud of myself. I am feeling a lot better in myself today than I was last week.
So that's entirely unstructured, unsolicited feedback. How did it go for you? It went like this. And we get hundreds and hundreds of these videos over the year that we need to be able to do something with. So now we've done all of that, I'll talk about what I was supposed to talk about, which is about AI and about our use of AI tools in the work that we're doing in the social impact space specifically. Just a couple of kind of precursor thoughts around AI and around where it's useful and where it's not useful. I saw this slide presented at another conference that I was at that I thought was a really useful framing and positioning of when we should and shouldn't implement AI tools, right? So we've got organizational impact on the axes along the bottom, cognitive load along the side. And then there's the stuff that's quite difficult, right? It's a distraction. This is really, really hard, but it's got quite little impact on the organization, but it still needs doing. And I think AI has got a role to play here in augmenting us, augmenting our capabilities, and being able to do that stuff more quickly. So alongside all of my other work, I currently administer our Salesforce org. I use AI all the time now to do things like write complex formulae for a formula field, because it can take me hours to find where I've missed a bracket or a comma or whatever, and GPT can do it in seconds. And then there's the other stuff along the bottom, right, which has got which is quite easy to do, but quite repetitive, quite monotonous, quite boring. And we can use AI tools here to automate some of those things, right? So I see lots of chatbots for websites being built if you want to book tickets or buy a jumper or whatever, right? It's that kind of automation that we can do to then create this space in the middle where we can continue to increase our potential as humans, right? So I don't think it's the case that AI is going to come along and take all of our jobs, at least not yet. I think there's a role for it to kind of tackle some of these outlying tasks so that we can concentrate on furthering our potential as workers and as people. And I think it's really easy to kind of plug AI into everything that we do, right? But the kind of mantra I keep in my head is that once an AI tool can do something better, faster, cheaper, and safer than me, then perhaps that's the time to think about implementing that tool in my day-to-day work. As a social purpose organization, though, I think it's really, really important that we understand that just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should do something. And I think we need to think as a social purpose organization quite carefully about the impact or the potential impact that that has on the young people that we work with, on ourselves, and on our kind of ethical responsibilities. So as far as I've seen quite a lot of the time, a lot of the demonstrations of AI tools that I've seen basically result in an email template being written more quickly. Wow, fascinating stuff. Lots and lots of people are looking at AI tools for efficiency gains, to improve user experience, and emergingly making decisions. I think that's quite complicated and quite difficult, and I urge quite a lot of caution there. I think there's definitely a role for human to be in the loop at all times when we're implementing these tools. But I see less people doing the work that we're doing around social impact. Effectively, doing more with less is what lots and lots of organizations are trying to do. Now, this is another snapshot from a Viz for Social Good visualization that someone did for us, and it maps out the young people and their relationships with other people and the impact that those relationships have on their well-being. What I'm trying to visualize here is that we could take all of those reflection videos. I could employ someone full-time to go and watch all of them, to make subjective decisions on the content and then react to what they've seen or not seen in those videos, right? But tools like generative AI give us the opportunity to work beyond human comprehension, right? So there is no way I could hold all of those videos in my head at once all the time and be able to see across them. The AI tool that we're building allows us to do that. So fundamentally, the kind of killer question is this, right? If we could sit with Yaz, who you saw on the reflection video, and Saran, and have a conversation with her, we'd understand at quite a granular level the impact that we're having on Yaz and on her life. But we're working with hundreds of young people a year. We're talking to organizations that are working with upwards of 80,000 young people a year, right? There's no way we could sit and talk to each one of those people and extract those insights. So I think the work that we're now doing has enabled us to do that. So the video with Yaz and Saran that you watched, our current engine allows us to take those videos, transcribe them, crucially identify who's talking. So when, from the tone of the conversation, identify who's the musician and who's the participant. Because in this particular use case, I don't particularly care what the musician says. The musician is deliberately trying to elicit responses around autonomy, competence, relatedness. I care what the young person's saying, and that's the data I want to analyze. If I wanted to go and do a piece of work to identify whether the musician's being autonomy supportive, then it's very easy to do that once I've identified who's spoken. We then grab that transcript, tokenize the PII, and send it up to, at the moment, GPT, other LLMs are available, and ask GPT to return me some unstructured text. So I'm asking GPT to return the most positive sentences around autonomy, competence, relatedness. I'm asking GPT to return me the most negative sentences. That's really impactful for me already with Noise Solution, because I can put that most positive sentence overall. I'm immensely proud of myself. I'm feeling a lot better in myself today than I was last week. Brilliant. Mail merge that into an email template, send it to a social worker who has got a bulging caseload, and say, the young person that you couldn't engage with has just said this thing. They've actually said that. Go and see where they've said it and go and engage with that process. Filling out grant applications, marketing materials, any of that stuff where we need those kind of sound bitey type quotes, click of a button, we've got it in front of us. More importantly, we're asking the LLM to rate those senses of competence, autonomy, relatedness. At the moment, on an arbitrary scale between 1 and 5. When we've got a data set, we're going to be going and doing the academic validation to validate what we're asking the LLM to do. But scale those concepts on a scale between 1 and 5 and tell me why you've done that. So because of the variability of generative AI tools, we're asking the engine to do this a number of times, and we're then returning the average of those data. So it's like one of those things where you drop a marble in the top and it bounces down a bunch of needles and then ends up in generally the right place, but there's some variation in the result that it returns. We're running it a number of times and taking averages. What that then allows us to do is grab measurable data points over time from conversational data. So we're able to see from a young person coming in at this point saying these things, at this point they're saying these things, and those scale data have changed in this way from natural conversational data. Importantly, we can then start to overlay on top of these data the SwimWeb's wellbeing data that we're capturing. Does their sense of competence map to increases or decreases in SwimWeb's data? Does more engagement in that young person's digital story map to increases in feelings of relatedness? I don't know yet, but we're building the data set to be able to see that impact 360 picture. But I hear you all cry from the digital ether, AI and personal data is scary. Yes, it is scary. And we need to be really, really conscious about the data that we're sending to LLMs and what we're asking it to do. So as a social purpose organization, trust, transparency, ethics are at the center of what we do, right? We're spending quite a lot of time working with a legal firm to make sure we're legally compliant. That's fairly easily done. What's more important is that we are ethical in the work that we're doing. So we are building in clear, informed opt-in, opt-out capability. How do people opt in an informed way? Because we've created this TLDR video explainer that's presented to people. So we're presenting a video that says, here's the privacy notice that you can read, and you should read it. But actually, here are the things that you should be concerned about with use of AI tools in your data. And here's what we've done about it. So we're upfronting all of those concerns and saying, this is what you should be worried about, and this is what we've done about it, and this is why. And then we're doing all of the stuff you'd expect around tokenization of PII, zero copy with LLM tools, secure transfer protocols, all of that kind of stuff. The point is we've thought about the ethics. So in terms of where we're going next, we are accelerating quite quickly our work in this space to continue taking advantage of these emerging tools and the developments in those tools. We're really interested in EDI, so equality, diversity, inclusion principles, and the inherent biases in LLM models that are trained on non-diverse data and engines that are written by non-diverse people. So we're hopefully about to do a research project to investigate what we can do from a prompt engineering perspective to push EDI principles up into an LLM rather than trying to draw those things down. So we're inverting that paradigm, hopefully. We're working on the validation. Once we've got a data set, we're going to be working with a university to validate the data that we're producing. And then we're looking to continue to work on further measurement modules, ESG goals, housing associations, private companies. Like the technology we're producing is massively applicable. And this image, by the way, was generated by GPT in a prompt that I sent, which I think is fascinating. That's me done. Jazz hands. There's a QR code there that you can scan. I presume these slides will be sent out to you afterwards. I'm very happy for them to do so. There's kind of a longer video when you scan the QR code to show you what we've been doing with it, and then my phone number, email address, etc.
Damien, what you do is really amazing. Amazing organization. Any questions for the audience? For Damien and Simon? Anyone have questions? Comments? Just come off mute. Kevin, do you have a question?
I see Bronwyn has a question. You want to go ahead, Bronwyn?
I'm happy to go after Kevin. It's no problem.
Kind of a bit of a race. Yeah, I apologize if I miss it. So I agree with what Frederick said. I was blown away with what your approach, your model. I even put in the chat. I'm sad I missed this project this year. So please, please, please come back. I apologize if I missed it. Are you guys focused just in the UK area? Is it broader than that? Is there plans for seeding an organization like yours in other areas, other countries?
Yeah, sure. So Noise Solution is based in the east of England. We are about to spin out a separate but connected entity to house this kind of impacts technology development. And the meeting we were rushing from to get to this one was with an investor, which went pretty well. So I think those plans are going to be accelerating quite quickly. Yeah, and there's no reason why the technology that we're creating can't be global, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a super incredible project. As a violinist who also does digital music, it's something that I would have loved to have been involved in. I think my question is on the ethical front. I'm curious to dig into knowing a bit more about how young people, I'm assuming that a lot of the people you work with are under 18, are able to opt out and remove their data once it's within something like ChatGPT and other solutions, I would be interested in knowing that if these are direct quotes going in, even if they're not associated with a name, that over time, given the rate that AI technology is developing, that there would be a possibility or a reasonable possibility that those direct quotes could be matched up with content that young people are sharing online.
Sure.
And if AI is able to kind of detect and profile young people, and that's then being used for targeting underrepresented and marginalized populations, in particular in the UK, Black youth, how is that being thought about in your organization?
So how is that being thought about? Quite a lot is the first point. Like, it's a really thorny issue. And I think we're feeling our way through it. So the opt-in, opt-out consent is under 18, over 18, parent, carer, or young person themselves. The data that we're sending to the LLM is conversational data that the young person expects to be viewed by other people anyway. So these conversations are posted onto their story to be viewed by other people. So it's not, these aren't private conversations that we're posting illicitly in the background, right? And we continue to work to a more and more refined security framework. So we're trying to leverage work that Salesforce has done already around the trust layer and around how data is transferred backwards and forwards to LLMs. I think the kind of short answer to your question is we're very hyper aware of the kind of black box nature of these LLM tools, and we're doing everything we can to mitigate against that.
Thank you so much. That's a great answer. So is it technically possible for a young person who changes their mind later to actually delete their data from the LLM?
Not by us.
Okay.
So in terms of how that's privacy note, in terms of our thinking around how that's working, I think it's the same as any other data. Black box LLM aside, we are able to and would delete the data that we hold. Any data that's been published in the public domain, we would make reasonable attempts to delete those data. But the same as the SwimWeb scores, that I get that it's kind of different data, right? But the same as the SwimWeb scores that we capture and measure, we publish those publicly in impact reports on an aggregated level. We can't, once it's gone into the public domain, it's really difficult for us to retract those data. So I don't think it's actually that different. I think it's this kind of black box, this lack of clarity around the black box approach, which we're hyper aware of.
Thank you.
Actually, Damien, I have a question. So earlier you talked about, you know, your folks could share and on social media, and you know, kind of counted the likes and so forth. How do you balance that with, you know, what's happening out there with youth and, you know, the vanity metrics and, you know, youth actually not, you know, even getting depressed because they don't have enough likes and all of that? Like, how are you balancing that with the work that you're doing?
Sure. So we're not posting on social media. We're posting on our own platform, which is a familiar social media experience. And then the young person invites into that experience people that are important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Those people engage in that story because they're engaged in that journey, right? And then our musicians do a lot of work to encourage people to engage with the stuff that's happening. We measure that in the background, and if stuff isn't happening, if there are no likes, no comments, whatever, then members of the team will jump in and say stuff. Okay. And it's it's a pleasure of my job on a Friday afternoon to sit and go through people's stories and see what's happening. But we're hot housing the best bits of social media without exposing people to that kind of vanity metric stuff. We're creating this story where the young person's truly at the center, amplifying their successes, right? It's deliberately positively biased.
That's great. Great to hear. Thank you.
Any more questions for Damien or Simon?